Hey everybody, my name is Vin and I am an account executive at Demandbase, and I'm here to take your prospecting to the next level. I'll be sharing with you guys my prospecting checklist that I use before sending any email and how I leverage advanced multi-channel prospecting to break through the noise. As a brief agenda of what you all can expect today, I'm going to be walking you through the impact of personalized messaging, how we can effectively personalize more emails through the prospecting checklist, and the different channels that us as salespeople have today at our fingertips. I'll also be going through real-life examples of emails, videos, social interactions that I've used to book meetings with C-level executives within my target accounts. Lastly, I'll be leaving you with some key takeaways of how I was able to successfully transition from an SDR to an AE and leave you guys with some key takeaways that you can take back to your sales organization and start prospecting today. Now, to prove the effectiveness of personalized prospecting, we actually conducted an internal study here at Demandbase over the course of the year. Over the course of the year, we looked at more of the cadence, more templated emails over the team, and we saw that it actually led to a 29% open rate and a 4.5% reply rate. So we looked at the following year to really focus more on personalization, and doing that, we were able to improve both our open and reply rate by over 50%. SDRs, I get it. You're banging your head up against the wall trying to personalize your emails while you have a manager asking you to hit an activity number. It's a really hard balancing act. And AEs, I get it. Let's be real, right? You guys don't want to prospect anymore. In fact, you may have even moved out of the SDR role because you don't want to prospect anymore. You and I both know that that's never going to go away. No matter if you're a manager or an individual contributor, you're always going to have to prospect. So, I'm not here to convince you that you should be personalizing your emails. I think that's pretty status quo now at this point. But what I want to do is help you guys understand how we can scale out personalization to effectively reach more prospects. And with seeing how effective personalization is, I really wanted to find a way to replicate this strategy while also reaching my activity goals for the day. That's where my prospecting checklist comes into play, which consists of 3 simple categories, which I'll dive into later on. Those consist of individual, company, and CRM. The first step in crafting an email is to grab your prospect's attention. The way that I'm doing that is by personalizing my outreach based on the individual. Now, I've listed a bunch of examples here, but the main place you'll want to look for things to personalize based on the individual is their LinkedIn profile. You can look for low-hanging fruit such as their persona, title, work anniversary, awards, or even a new role, right? This is like the bare minimum you should be doing for personalizing an email. However, you could be taking this a little bit further if you just kind of put in the work. One of the things that I like to look for is content. Now, whether that's content produced by your prospect or content that's your prospect was recently featured in, this is going to be super effective in grabbing their attention. Things to look for are any blogs, LinkedIn articles, podcasts, interviews, or even their own personal website. And luckily, since COVID, one of the only good things to come about this is that our prospects have been online more. They're producing more content. We have a higher chance of getting in touch with them. And there's frankly more ammunition for us as salespeople to craft our outreach. One of the last places that I'll typically look for information is their Twitter profile. And now Twitter is a really great place where professional meets personal, and you can find out a lot of things about your prospect, like hobbies or interests, that you typically may have not found on their LinkedIn profile. Now, doing any of these steps will help you create an instant relationship with your prospect and really start off on the right foot. And this will show that you're not a robot, you're not an automation tool, and you're a real person who has taken the time to have done your research on your prospect. So, now that we've grabbed your prospect's attention, personalizing it based on the individual, the next step is personalizing it based off the company. Now again, I've listed a handful of examples here, but the main thing you'll want to look for to get a good understanding of your prospect's business is their company website or their LinkedIn profile. We'll be able to uncover a lot of things about the company, like what industry they're in, what products do they sell, what do they sell, and who do they sell to, right? Now this is, again, the very bare minimum you should be doing when personalizing it based off the company. To take it a step further, you can find any recent news about the company, like funding, a new product launch, maybe awards or recognition, partnerships. This can all be found in Google News or just the company website again. The last place, especially if your target accounts are publicly traded companies or for any of you enterprise SDRs, is any financial reportings. This is public information that we can access to get a deep dive view into their current pain points, KPIs, goals, and opportunities for the upcoming year. Now, doing any of these steps will help you break the ice and build an instant trust with your prospects, coming off as an industry expert and someone they can really rely on. So now that we've personalized based off the individual and the company, the last step to do is to check your CRM. So this is a really important yet simple step that you should be doing before sending any email. And it's simply just checking the CRM. This is where all of the great information is going to live, where you can see previous sales cycles, you can see have they reacted to any marketing campaigns, attended an event, have they been through evaluations before, are they former customers, and if so, why did they churn? Because frankly, when you speak with a prospect that's evaluated your software 1, 2, or 3 times in the past, you're going to be having different conversations with them versus somebody that's completely new to your product or service and is completely unaware of your business offering. So now that we've got a good understanding of the prospecting checklist, how to personalize based off the individual, company, and referencing your CRM, I wanted to show you a real-life example of putting these to use and getting an email response off the first touch. So here is an example of the prospecting checklist actually broken out based on the prospect I was reaching out to. So in the first category, individual, looking at my prospect's LinkedIn, I saw that he actually got promoted to a new role, which I was going to use to grab his attention and break through the noise. The second thing I found on his LinkedIn was that he actually recently won a B2B Innovation Award, which again, I was also going to use. Also a little bit of a stroke in the ego there, which definitely helps you out in getting a response. And the last thing I found on his Twitter was that he was a musician and makes these different things, which again, I was going to use in my outreach. The second category was company. So what I looked for is simply just going to the company website and actually found that the company recently passed their 100,000th customer, which is a huge milestone to any startup or any company in general, really. And the last thing I did was obviously checking our CRM. I saw at a former company, he actually evaluated us and timing was a bit off. So after gathering my ammunition, I drafted my email. And you can see here, I typically like to stay in the 3 to 4 line structure when sending an email. The first line item, I got right into it, grabbing his attention by congratulating his team on the 100,000 customers they recently passed. Line items 2 and 3, I mentioned his new role, the B2B Innovation Award, and some of the different strategies he's going to be running into with his new role, specifically around demand gen. And the last thing I did was I used this language, not sure if timing was better, just because I saw in the CRM that he said that timing was off and we had to pick up the conversation at a later date. One of the things I've been doing in terms of my call to action is actually ending all my emails with the word starting either way. It's something that Josh Braun does, and if you don't know who Josh Braun is, he's one of the best salespeople to follow on LinkedIn. It helps you leave your emails in a very positive manner. It also helps us as salespeople come off as less pushy and less salesy. So putting together my email checklist, he wound up getting back to me and said he's interested in learning more and to send a calendar invite for a few weeks out. So as you can see, just being able to gather this information really helps us structure all of our emails going forward. But as you and I both know as salespeople, it's very uncommon to get an email response off the first touch. So how can we increase our chances for a response and reply? That's by using multi-channel prospecting. So here's an example of a very common multi-channeled cadence, and that consists of email, following up with a LinkedIn in-mail or connection request, and a voicemail. Now this is what we call the triple touch approach, and it is very effective. The only thing is that Topo reported that about 80% of high growth companies are using this method. So although it is more effective than using email, 80% of companies are also doing this. So how can we build out this multi-channeled approach to break through the noise? So that's where advanced multi-channel prospecting comes into play. Now, there is a lot here on this screen, so let me just break it down for you guys. The way I'm thinking about multi-channel prospecting is just like a marketer. You can think of this as an email marketing campaign and different touch points throughout. So the email is the main hub. That's where you're going to be putting your value prop. That's where you're going to be personalizing your messaging using the prospecting checklist. It is easily the most effective channel that will get directly to your buyers. The rest of the channels outside of email are really just used to grab your attention from your prospects and redirect their attention back to the email. To the left directly of the email is the phone. And we can sit here and debate all day whether cold calling is dead or not. But I'm here to tell you that it is dead, right? You're not going to sit there and cold call all day. The days of smiling and dialing are over. The way in which salespeople use phones today is to simply leave voicemails, 30 to 60 seconds worth, to redirect their attention back to your email. Now, granted, if you get them live on the phone or they call you back, like that's obviously icing on the cake. But the main goal is to really get their attention back to your email. I'm using LinkedIn in the same fashion where I'm just sending them very soft connection requests and building my brand through different posts and interacting with the content they're sharing. The 3 different touch points that I've added on top of the multi-channeled or multi-touch approach is direct mail, video, and Twitter. Now, direct mail is extremely effective because it allows you to use what you've gathered via the prospecting checklist to send a very personalized one-to-one gift. Sendoso even reported that it will increase response rates by about 30%. Now, granted, if you have a budget that goes to a platform like Sendoso, PFL, or Alice, like that's an ideal world. I understand that most companies don't have budgets set aside for one-to-one gift giving. Things you can do is leverage the prospecting checklist, check your ammunition, and check what kind of prospecting gift that's a very one-to-one manner you can send to them. For example, I've sent books to prospects, I've sent Pez containers because one of my prospects collected Pez. All of these are under $10, and it's going to give you a positive ROI if you get the meeting and close the deal. Now, if you're saying $10 is way too much, the cheapest, most effective way you can send a direct mail is actually just by sending a handwritten note. There's less noise, not a lot of people are doing it, and it actually goes a long way. And if you leave the note off by saying you'll follow up via email, that's where you're going to see the most success. The other 2 channels that are very popular, obviously video right now, and Twitter. I think Twitter is a very underutilized platform for salespeople. And frankly, there's less noise and a low barrier to entry, and you can get directly to your prospect where other salespeople currently aren't using it. So the way I'm currently using Twitter, besides the way of gathering information, is by just dropping them a tweet to really reference back to their email. I'm also recording videos and tweeting it directly to them, which I'll show you guys a little bit of what that looks like in the further examples. So to show you guys how I combine the email prospecting checklist as well as the multi-channeled approach, I want to walk you through 2 examples of doing just that. Here, my prospect, I broke up the prospecting checklist into the 3 areas. I found that she is a fitness enthusiast on her Twitter, which is going to be very important in part of my strategy in getting a response. And I also found that she is a Forbes contributor via just a simple Google search. The next category is the company, and just by browsing on the company website, I was able to see that their target market is banking. And then actually checking in our CRM, we actually had no previous sales conversations with them. So it was important to really go into depth explaining demand base, at least at a high level. So after checking online and trying to find some things to personalize off of, I actually saw she shared an article on Twitter from Forbes that she had written, basically saying how marketers should be bringing their clients out to fitness classes instead of the traditional wining and dining. And I decided to take a page from her playbook and created this really crappy fitness voucher that I actually stapled to a handwritten note and mailed to her work address. And I followed up via email by saying, I saw your Forbes article and it really inspired me to take a page from your playbook and invite you to a fitness class in New York City. I even mentioned the handwritten note I sent her, again, just tying back all of my touch points and putting in the demand-based value prop at the bottom there. So I was really proud of this idea. I was like, this is definitely going to work. She wound up not getting back to me and not opening my email. So I went back to the advanced multi-channeled approach and thought of the channels that were underused at this point right now. I remember that I haven't used Twitter just yet. So I winded up just shooting her a tweet by saying, just challenge you to a Rumble fitness class in New York City via email. Are you up for the challenge? And that was all I did. And again, what it did was I was able to redirect her attention back to my email. And she wound up getting back to me over email and said, saw your tweet, love the creativity. The answer is yes. So again, this is a really good example of how we can leverage both the prospecting checklist to build up your ammunition and at the same time advanced multi-channel prospecting using channels like direct mail, Twitter, and email to book a meeting with your target accounts. And it was also a really fun time to be able to go to these fitness classes with your prospects. I mean, that's awesome. The last example I want to walk you guys through is another fun example that I experienced, and it allowed me to get a meeting with a C-level executive from my target accounts. So again, taking my prospect and breaking it up with the email checklist, I was able to find a few different things about the prospect that I was going to use as ammunition. The first thing I found about my prospect is that he is a huge basketball fan via Twitter, and that will come into play later, you'll see. I saw he's a Chicago native, which was important at the time because this is when the Michael Jordan documentary came out, and I really kind of wanted to play along those lines there. The second category is the company, and I actually leveraged one of Google's new search engine features, which allows you to discover podcasts much easier. So what I did was input the company name plus the word podcast in the Google search bar, and it actually will surface any podcasts that feature your company or, in this scenario, your prospect in there. So I was able to find a recent podcast that my prospect was featured on, and he talked a lot about his goals, specifically around ABM, which is what Demandbase really helps with. And I found a quote that he wanted to better reach his target market through ABM. So obviously I was going to use that. The last thing I checked was my CRM and was able to find that he had evaluated us in the past at a previous role. Now, I mentioned earlier that he is a huge basketball fan. So much so that he has a series he created on Twitter where he posts basketball trick shots in his driveway like this. So I was clearly inspired by this guy. He is easily the coolest CMO ever, and I decided to send him a trick shot video back over Twitter. Check it out. Hey Aaron, what's going on? I want to create this video for you because I saw a bunch of your Jude Perfect trick shots. As a fellow basketball fan, I figured we'd put a little wager on it. If I make this into the basket, you have to respond by email. Let's do it. Let's go. So he wound up getting back to me over Twitter actually and said, well played, we'll respond to your email, make it backwards, and we can schedule a call. So obviously I accepted the challenge and responded back with this video. I'm a man of my word. So again, just showing you guys a really cool example of how you can have fun prospecting. And this is the final email that I created for my prospect that generated the meeting. I started off the email by referencing the video I created for him over Twitter, again, tying back my different touch points to email. I talked about the Michael Jordan documentary and how he's a Chicago native, again, playing along that line there. And the second and third paragraph, I really dove into the overall company goals that I found on the podcast. And lastly, just tying together what I found in the CRM to kind of bring him to speed on kind of what's going on internally at Demandbase. And finally, leaving my emails off always with either way. Any CMO who's that into basketball is okay in my book. This is the email that I drafted. It's because of the prospecting checklist, I was able to gather all this information and come up with a strategy to get a response. And he responded, nicely done, Thursday at 2 p.m. Central it is. So again, getting off to a really great start with a CMO who typically comes in later on in the sales cycle. Now I'm having an initial meeting with a CMO and we're already getting off on a good foot just because of that. So what you're going to find is going to help you accelerate deals faster because you're creating an instant relationship with your prospects. Using these tactics, I was really able to see a lot of success in the SDR role. Using the checklist and the advanced channels, I was able to average about 144% of my monthly quota. My open rate was about 77% on my emails, and my reply rate was about 18%. And it helped me make that transition to SDR to AE in about 20 months. So I'm sure there's a lot of SDRs listening to this right now. This is the way to kind of boost your career to go into the account executive role. If you guys have any questions on that, feel free to shoot me an email or DM. Happy to chat through that. But as an AE now, I definitely keep that same mindset where I'm really owning my territory and making sure I'm prospecting every single day. Because granted, your SDR is getting paid to really prospect for you and generate these pipeline opportunities. But again, if you're really relying on somebody else, that's just not somewhere where I would want to be. We have to start changing our mindsets as account executives and owning our pipeline. That way, anything the SDR gets you is really just icing on the cake and something extra. But being able to keep up with these prospecting efforts as an AE, I was able, out of all my sourced deals, 33% of them are coming from myself, being self-sourced. It allowed me to decrease my time to close by 50%. And during a really challenging time in Q2, during the peak of COVID, when top of the funnel was which was something everyone was struggling with, I was still able to hit 246% of my quarterly quota. So again, I just really want to reiterate that in sales, this can be a really hard job. It can be super stressful, but we can really make it fun, right? We can play horse over Twitter with CMOs. Like, we could have fun doing this. We can go to fitness classes with our prospects. It's all about how you think about it. The key takeaways I want to leave you guys with is personalize, personalize, personalize. Please, it's going to help you increase your open and reply rates. And if you're a manager that has an insane activity quota over your SDRs, please think about that again. Take a subgroup of SDRs and have them lower their activity numbers and start putting more quality outreach out and see how that affects your numbers. Use the prospecting checklist just to ground yourselves and to identify things to look for when reaching out, and start adding different things to your cadences. Add things like Twitter, direct mail, video, LinkedIn voice. Any of these things that you haven't tried previously, I would suggest highly adding them to your cadences. And lastly, guys, get creative and get gritty. Just want to thank you guys for listening. My contact information is at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So if you guys are not connected with me on LinkedIn, feel free to shoot me an email or a connection request. And if you haven't checked out the Sales Success podcast I was featured on last year, my episode number is number 78. Feel free to give it a listen. Happy prospecting, guys.